Welcome to the Introduction to Bird Sits and Bird Language, the first in a three-part webinar series with special guest Dan Gardoqui. I'm Molly Songus. I do digital campaigns and bird language programs for Audubon, California, and I'm a somatic coach as well. We have over 1,000 people joining us today from all across California and various locations across the country. It's an amazing day to be together, and so I hope you really feel that powerful wingspan of all of us together to really jump into this new topic. We are on the Zoom with so many people we can't see your faces, but again, please feel free to use the chat to share with us your responses to things that we're talking about. And again, if you're just joining us now, we're inviting you to share where are you coming in from today, and if you've seen a bird today, which one, or what did it look like? So feel free to chime in. So this is the first in the three-part series, and they're happening on today and the following 2 Tuesdays is at 11 a.m. And the next one's going to be on shapes of alarm, the 5 voices of the birds, and how to spot trouble. And the one after that's going to be on mimicry. And Dan's going to lead us through how to imitate 5 common birds in California. So we've got a great series set up for you today. And today is an introduction to just the basics on bird sits and the beginning introduction to bird language. And, you know, part of our intention with launching this series is to really meet the moment in time that we're in. And for many of us with the coronavirus, we're having to really slow down, we're sheltering in place, and we're really trying to appreciate the birds that we can see out of our own windows or backyards or wherever we are having to shelter in place. And bird sits is an incredibly powerful mindfulness practice for this time. It's an incredible companion to this time. And it really allows us to connect more deeply to ourselves, to the birds, and to really also enliven our experience at home and make it something that every day is a new adventure, even if we can't go anywhere. And I'll give a quick example from my own experience over the last 5 weeks or so here in Oakland. And it was a really special time for my family because my sister was pregnant and due with a baby around March 20th. And I was planning to fly out and visit with my sister during this time, but I couldn't go out there, and I was really sad. You know, she's really far away in Massachusetts, and I was sad that I couldn't be closer. And the day finally arrived when the baby came into the world, and he came in the morning, and we got that first text announcing he's arrived. We didn't know his name yet. And I took my 1-year-old daughter on a walk in our neighborhood. We just go down a few blocks, and we do a round each day where we stop and we smell the rosemary. And so we had just kind of rounded past the rosemary in our neighborhood, and I suddenly stopped and I felt this really potent energy like, wow, you know, I'm so far away from this new member of my family, but I feel it so strongly this moment. I feel connected to it. It felt incredibly potent and like the air was full of love. And my daughter and I just stopped and we took in that moment and we thought about this little boy. And that very second I looked up, and above us on the wire over our head were these 2 mourning doves. And they were just sitting there, and I felt like, oh wow, we're with the mourning doves today, and we're thinking about this new baby, and this moment has arrived where he's now part of our family. And so we sat there for a moment and enjoyed that. And we got home, I got my text message announcing the name of this new baby. And my sister said, welcome, Callum Songus O'Keefe. And I said, oh, Callum, what a beautiful name, but I don't know that name. It's not a name that's been in our family before. So I looked it up and I said, what is the translation? What's the meaning of this name? And when I looked it up, it said, Callum is a Scottish Gaelic name and translates into dove. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a beautiful moment. I am like thousands of miles away from my sister right now into this, you know, very important moment in my life too. But the birds were bringing us together. And because I allowed myself to feel that connection, to feel that, oh my gosh, Molly, stop, look up, and feel that the birds could bring me that much closer to my loved ones from far away, it just really landed for me. Oh my gosh, we need the birds. They are a companion for this time. They're bringing us so much love and connection and belonging where we otherwise might be struggling with it now. So let me just stop there and say, you know, Dan, we're so excited to have you leading us in this practice and taking us into these types of experiences, and to formally introduce you Dan Gardoqui is a bird language expert, and he's a science editor of the book, What the Robin Knows, How Birds Reveal Nature's Secrets. Dan has spent nearly 30 years teaching and facilitating groups on bird language in 3 continents. And he's a mimic and can imitate a wide variety of birdsong. Hopefully we'll get a little taste of that today. Dan has co-founded and led a Nature Connection nonprofit for 20 years, where he taught bird language programs for all ages and levels, and he helped design a permanent exhibit, A Bird's World, at the Boston Museum of Science. Today, Dan runs Lead with Nature, where he does nature-based consulting and programs for businesses, communities, and individuals. And thank you, Dan, for zooming in to be with us today from the forests of southern Maine, just a few miles from the Atlantic Ocean, and I hope it smells good. I love the Atlantic Ocean. So to welcome you, Dan, let me just try and greet you with my best morning dove. Wait.
Okay, you got it.
That's horrible. I did it better earlier. But Dan, maybe you can respond with in kind.
A little, oh, yeah, right. Need a lick whistle. Well, we'll get into that later, but yep, there you go. That's what I got right.
All right, why don't you all of you out there, wherever you are, if you know the morning dove or you have another favorite bird song you like to imitate, join us and give it your best shot. Ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right.
There you go.
Hand it off to you, Dan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Thank you, Molly. And whoa, this is awesome. There are about at least 400 people right now. At least they're logged into this, and you may actually be listening and watching, and hopefully you are. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with us today. We're pretty darn lucky to get to do this and to get to be here. And I can't help but think there's so much to learn about what's going on, what's happening in the world right now, and bird language and how they're intersecting. Just the other day, I was out doing the weekly shopping for the family and just looking at the way people are giving each other eye contact, especially mask wearing, where you can't really read lips and facial, like smiles and all that. Watching how people are reading people's body language and making eye contact and how we're giving each other space is extremely similar to some of the practices we use in practicing bird language. So we'll get into that down the road, but I just want to say, yeah, we are primed and ready to go here. So yeah, Molly, thanks for the intro. And yeah, I've invested a ton of time in the last few decades doing a lot. And a lot of that has to do with my passion and love for birds and bringing people closer to nature. And Nature Connection is the field that I've been in since I was a teenager. And since someone alerted me to this idea that maybe if I paid attention to the birds, I could learn a lot more about what's happening around me in the world. They didn't quite say that, but I'll get into that story in a little bit. Yeah, I am an expert in bird language, but I will tell you, if bird language was like a K through PhD level a journey in a linear fashion, which I don't think it is, I still feel like I'm a middle schooler. And I've been doing this a really long time. And I am constantly humbled by the ability of what there is to learn out there in the world. So I'm sure there's people on this call who have amazing things that you can share with all of us. And if we were in a venue where we could do that, we would. So by no means do I want you to think I know it all, but I know a lot and I've done a lot and I'm excited about this topic and I'm always excited to learn more. You know, ever since I was a teenager and I was kind of tuned into birds, Audubon's been a big part of that for me. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, not as exciting as the reality TV show version, but I grew up not far from some beautiful public land called Gateway National Recreation Area, and also known as Sandy Hook. And I used to go out there. I used to get up at like 4:35 in the morning in the spring, drive my old beat up Jeep down to the beach, and walk out onto the dunes. And there, with mist nets already cranking away at sunrise, were these lovely old Audubon lady volunteers. And I would hang out with them. And they were amazing. And I learned so much. And I got to actually like see birds really close and eventually learned how to handle birds a little bit. And it was just so amazing to be that connected. And at the time, I wasn't really conscious of what was going on, but clearly I had a strong desire, like many of us do, to embrace the wild, to embrace things outside of us, that we have this love, this love of life, of, biophilia, as E.O. Wilson called it. And it's a very natural, innate thing. And if you're on this call today, you definitely have that as well, because why else would you be spending your time talking about birds and people, over a computer screen with people you've probably never met? So that's awesome. And so we are hardwired to connect. As human beings, as family members, as community members. It's not always easy. It's not always fun and pleasant, but we are hardwired to connect. We're a social species, and we're also hardwired to connect to everything else. And when we say bird language, really what we're talking about here is the ability to speak the language of nature. Birds are a great gateway to that language. They are the best one, I would say. They're awake when we're awake. They're generally pleasing to the eye and ear, generally. Sometimes they might get under your skin. They're generally interesting to us. They're colorful. They make songs. We like to be around them. And so therefore, they're really convenient to learn from. And so today, what we're going to do is really focus on kind of what is this bird language thing, which I'm explaining now, and then also how do we do these things called bird sits, which are basically practices to help us get better at this whole bird language thing. So, in the beginning there, when we started up, I was just doing a little robin song, like a. It's melodic, it's beautiful, it has tones, it goes up and down, but then when a robin goes, right, that might feel a little different to you. Right, so bird language is really no different than me just saying, hey, Molly, or Molly, and then being, Molly, right? They're the same exact phrase with a different intonation, different breathing, different frequency, Molly, 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 versus Molly, right? It's so you already know this. We already know this. You should feel more confident than you might. If like, oh, I don't know if I can know this stuff. You know this stuff. We're hardwired to know this stuff. So the way we treat each other, the way we can walk into a room and know what the mood and the energy is, we can do that outside too. And many of you may already do this. And we could do it to a very fine, interesting, technical degree even. I mean, it's fascinating. So, I grew up as a birder myself. I was way into birds, and, I had the back of the old Pearson Field Guide, read my checklist, and I would check off all the birds and keep my life list going, which was exciting for me at the time. I was pretty competitive. I still am a little bit. And then I also really, really enjoyed, going on bird walks and learning the names and learning fall warblers or spring warblers and, shorebirds and all that good stuff. So, I come from a birding background as well. So all of you Audubon folks out there, I get it. I get the passion. I get the value of really seeing a diversity of birds and getting to go to beautiful places and connecting birds to conservation and creating bird-friendly communities. It's all really important to me. It's something that's been dear to my heart for a long, long time. So I come today with that overlap, and I also just want to say that this isn't something I've made up. This is something all of our ancestors, no matter where we came from, for a very long time, have been practicing. And my teachers of this have, while I've had some wonderful human teachers who've pointed me in great directions, including John Young, a member of your great state of California, I've had, most of my teachers have been out there in the wild. They're the birds themselves. They're fox, weasel, house cat, hawk, owl, right? And those animals and those wild ones have also been teaching others for millennia. So many, many native cultures in many, many parts of the world do something, practice very similar things, maybe with or without language that we're giving it today. But it's just basically, you're part of the conversation of nature. That's all we're doing here. It's a powerful, simple practice, and it has many wonderful benefits. And especially one we're really looking a lot at today is thinking about mindfulness and how a bird language, kind of understanding bird language, taking on a bird sit practice can really help us find more mindfulness in our lives. So that's my quick and dirty intro. And I want to start with a short little story now. It's a two-part story. So the first part was when I kind of had a little spark go off for me as a kind of a student, a new person to this thing called bird language. If you imagine yourself wandering around a park somewhere, it could look like anything you want it to look like. And somewhere in the distance, there's a larger, beautiful animal. There's some charismatic megafauna. So if you're calling from the slope foothills in Colorado, it might be an elk. If you're calling from coastal, prairie, California, maybe it's a bobcat, or who knows, maybe it's a deer, maybe it's a moose. depending on where you are. But there's this big, beautiful animal, and you have a desire to kind of get closer and see that animal. Maybe you don't have binoculars with you. I know if you're an Audubon person, you probably have your binocs, but maybe you left them at home. And you want to see this animal closer. You're curious about this animal. And you try and approach this animal, and it's 100 yards, 250 yards away, say, and you're getting closer. And about halfway across the gap, you see this animal just look up, turn towards you, and takes off. You were dead silent. The wind was coming right at you. And you're like, what is that? How come I can't get close to these animals? Why is it that I'm spooking all these animals? So that experience for me was very real. And it kept happening again and again and again. And it actually wasn't even in big fields. It was in every habitat you can imagine. As a young man, I was really interested in getting close to a lot of animals, kind of to take photographs, to journal, to sketch, to just better understand them. And I kept not being able to do it. And eventually one of my teachers just said, well, are you paying attention to the birds? And I just kind of looked at him like, well, what? That's like a non sequitur. It doesn't make any sense to me. And he said, that's all. Just left me with a And didn't feel terribly helpful at the moment, but sure enough, next time I was out there and I couldn't get close to those animals, I thought about that, like, wait, what's going on with the birds? And sure enough, at that point, I remember one of the first times I was trying to get close to a small group of deer, I heard this. And out east, we have a jay similar to your western scrub jay. We have the blue jay, who's the more showy, louder, obnoxious. Well, I guess anyway, he's the other bird, the other blue jay. And so this blue jay really likes to tattle on you when you sneak around. Like literally, if you start to get into a sneaky body form, like it'll just tattle on you. And I was like, whoa, has that been happening all this time and I never even noticed? So that was the intro. That just blew my mind, because the short answer is yes. And not only that, but about a dozen other species have been giving information, very specific encoded information about what was coming towards an animal, as long as that animal was listening. And that quickly made me realize and ask myself a question: are we the only species that is not paying attention? Because chipmunk would know when blue jay was upset, and ground squirrel would know when towhee's upset, and it just on and on. Gopher would know when elk were stomping. So everywhere I went, I started to see all these animals are listening to each other, and they're all part of this conversation. And I can't see the cool, interesting stuff. I can't get nature's secrets unless I can understand this language of birds. So that just blew me away. Part two of the story was one of the first times I facilitated an intensive on bird language, which I've done many times now in many places. And I had an older birder. It's been in most of her life in her Audubon Society and Club, and very active and very busy, and a very accomplished birder, traveled the world birding, and wonderful, sweet person. Really enjoyed their company. Amazing person. And we came back from the first morning where I had them go out and do this little thing we're going to talk about in a minute, called the bird sit. Basically a quiet sit. Think qualitative birding, not quantitative. So you're sitting in one spot and you're listening and watching a few birds for a long period of time. We came back and we're walking back from that sit, and I said, oh, how'd that go for you? I was genuinely curious because I knew she was a very active birder, and she'd already been asking me many details about many migratory species, and she just stood there for a second, stopped. So I stopped and looked at her, and a tear just came out of her eye. And so I was curious. Said, I can't believe I've spent the last 40 to 50 years chasing and frightening birds because I wanted to get close to them. And I never once thought to just stop and let them come to me. It was a big moment for her. And we had a wonderful week with a lot of connection from there. So bird language has a lot to teach us. And now I'm going to hand it back to Molly, and we're going to start to go into what is this bird sit practice that helps us understand this powerful language of birds.
Thank you, Dan. I love that story. And I think that's a lot of what it offers for a lot of us who've done birding for a while, or if you're totally new to birds altogether, that you don't have to go out and identify them or put them on a checklist or chase after them, that the practice is really about sitting and really letting the birds come to us and seeing who shows up. And the more that we are quiet and the less disturbance that we create in our environment, the less fear that we create in our environment, the more the birds can just return to their, we call baseline behavior. It's just kind of what they do day in, day out when they're not worried about their life. And so that could be that they go back to, eating and, foraging. It could be that they go back to, mating or nesting or, just traveling from here to there. But we get a better view of what their day-to-day life is. And it's also pretty exciting because birds are so dramatic. They're drama queens. So they have so much going on and their fight for survival is very real every day. They've got so much predation on the landscape typically. So it's a really amazing way to really get a deeper, a glimpse into their day-to-day life and to really develop a more empathetic connection to what that life really means. And so the birds at practice that Dan's talking about is fairly simple. And honestly, if you just go outside for like 1 minute and sit down and watch birds, you're doing it. It's literally that simple. It doesn't have to be a huge lift. It's just that simple act of sitting down and connecting with the birds. And if you want to take that practice further and you want it to be more of a gateway into mindfulness, there are other steps that we can take with it. And so let me walk us through those steps. I'll do the first three and Dan will take the fourth and fifth, okay? So the first step is really simple. You just find a spot. And this is ideally a spot that you can visit, every day or every few days. So convenience is really important. So it could be right outside your door, your doorstep, a stoop, a backyard. It can be, a nearby park if that's safe to travel to. And if you can't leave your home, even like a window that you can look out totally does the trick. So finding a place that you can call your spot. Step 2 is just have a seat. And we want to find a comfortable sitting position like we would with any mindfulness practice. Sorry if you're hearing my daughter, she just woke up from her nap. So anyways, hi May. My wife's gonna tend to her. So find a comfortable seated position. So if you need a chair, a cushion, a blanket, snacks, hot drinks, make yourself comfortable. You want to try to set yourself up to sit pretty easily for 5 minutes and ideally 20 if you can make it there, but whatever you can do is great. And then once you're in your spot and you're seated comfortably, we begin our process of awakening the senses. And this is really where we get into more of a mindfulness practice. And for some of you, this might be something you do daily, or this is totally new. So take it, whatever pace works for you, and whatever level feels comfortable. But some of the things we might want to practice when we awaken our senses is, first just, let's actually start with something we feel grateful for. So maybe just like put a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, and just kind of tune into something that we feel like grateful for, even if it's just like the coffee I had this morning, or, I slept an extra hour today, or whatever it was, just something that feels genuine. And then from there, we can just take a few gentle breaths at whatever pace is good for us. Let's just do like 3 nice deep breaths. And we do this just begin settling our nervous system. There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of anxiety, and it helps us to kind of, get more grounded and nourish ourselves. Just take a few minutes to do some of that. After taking a few deep breaths, we can kind of wake up our senses a little bit. So we can start with that by, just like wake up our eyes. You can even blink a little bit if you need to, but just, activate our vision a little bit. So let's just, looking around our environment, wherever we are right now, and just tuning into color. Just where, what kind of colors are in our landscape? What kind of pigments are showing up? Where might there be, light or more shadow? What are the shapes in our environment, textures, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be a hard stare at any one thing, but we can just kind of let our eyes relax and just try to take in a little bit more in our visual field. We call that kind of relaxed visual awareness our owl eyes. And it helps us to actually perceive more that's in our periphery and more that may be happening on our subtle visual landscape. Yeah, like this. You can put your fingers to each side and just see if you can notice the movement of your fingers. Kind of wakes up your peripheral vision a little bit. So yeah, so taking in that rich tapestry of whatever visual field we're in. After that, we can get into sound. So what sounds are coming into our environment? Even from inside, can you hear birdsong? Or maybe the chatter of other people? Or maybe some traffic, depending on where you live. Whatever it is, just taking notice of all those pieces in our soundscape. And it's also, silence plays a big role in bird language. So we tune into silence too. And it's also part of what kind of can help us get into more quiet mind state. So we take a moment to just see if you can listen to the quietest sound in all directions. So that could be like a 360 around our bodies, just where do we sense or hear the quiet? Okay, and now we can smack our lips, see what's on our taste buds. Might be what we last ate. We might realize we forgot to brush our teeth today, whatever it is, but we just tune a little bit to that. We can take some little breaths and see if there's any odor on the air, any scent that we can pick up. When I'm doing bird sits, I often will pick up on the flowering jasmine in my neighborhood or the laundry from my neighbor's yard. But just take a moment to see if you can smell anything in your landscape now. And we can kind of do a little bit of a body scan as part of this. So just, taking note of where we feel temperature, where we might feel some like heat in our body, where we might feel more cool, like in my extremities, my toes and my fingers are cooler, whereas my chest feels really warm. And just kind of doing a little body scan for temperature. And that can kind of tune us in right here, right now. Or, where we might feel a little more tense, like where in our body we might be constricted and holding. Maybe our chest or our hearts are feeling a lot of stress, might feel more tension there, and where other parts of us might feel really relaxed. So just doing a little check-in on, what's happening in our body right now. And to wrap up, we can just take a moment to say, like, what mood is kind of dominating me right now? Am I feeling like joyful? Am I feeling angry or upset? Do I feel grief? Am I feeling like curious and excited? Like whatever that mood is that's predominant, we just kind of make a note of it. We don't have to change it. Whatever it is totally welcome. But we just kind of say, how am I doing right now? What mood is kind of present? And if you want, even feel free to throw your mood in the chat. And so just to wrap this all up, let's come back to hand on heart, hand below the belly button, and reconnecting to what we were feeling grateful for. And just noting that we are an amazing sensory organism. Our entire being is set up to perceive everything that's going on around us. We're incredibly intelligent in that way. And it's an amazing tool for tuning into what's happening with the birds. So any part of this practice that felt good for you, feel free to run with it or bring in other pieces from your own mindfulness practices. But just the idea is just to get grounded and connected and feel nourished and feel open and ready to receive what might be happening with the bird ecology and also what's happening with ourselves during this time. So with that, thank you for practicing that piece. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Dan, to take us into tuning into the birds.
Thank you, Molly. Like Molly said, maybe all of those pieces were really helpful for you, or maybe some work better than others. So make it your own. There's some great stuff in there. And thank you so much. So maybe right now outside you hear this, like a super high pitched, maybe you can't even hear that, but super high-pitched, buzzy, almost insect-like bird call. It's a bird we have all across this country. Tiny, beautiful, colorful, very sleek, maybe even sexy bird. Known for sharing their food with each other. Maybe some of you know this bird. But yeah, I see people saying, like, I didn't even realize I could hear birds from inside my house. But yeah, when we tune in, when we slow down, and we listen, and we tune in, yeah, we can pick up on a lot. Sometimes too much, but that's not our problem here today. It's what are those little quiet sounds? So right now I'm watching chickadees outside my windows, a pair of them. I still haven't figured out where they're nesting, but I'm pretty sure they're building a nest. They keep coming to my feeders and then going back, in the same direction. So that high pitch, the bird I'm attempting to mimic there, it's not coming out so great, is the cedar waxwing, which is a beautiful social flocking bird that we have. Many of you, usually they're way up high and sometimes hard to detect. So Molly settled us into our little our bird sit practice here. So we found a spot, got comfy, we slowed down, and we tuned in. But we're tuning in now into the birds. So we woke up those senses and now we tune into the birds themselves. And I think the whole point of that tuning into the senses is some way kind of like losing your mind and coming to your senses. So when we let go of the busy mind, when we let go of all the things we're thinking about, the laundry that didn't get done, and then is my kid doing his homework? Is there too much screen time? I don't know, 1,000 things that might be on your mind. Is my aunt going to get sick with this disease? We let go of that for a minute. It'll be there when we get back, but we let go of that, and that opens us up. We become much more receptive. And this is now where I say, put on the bird's mind. Step into a bird's world. So this fourth step of tuning into the birds is really stepping into the bird's world. It's leading with curiosity at this point. It's trying to imagine, what is it like maybe to be one of those birds? Those birds are your neighbors. My neighbors too. I'm watching this chickadee pair. I'm really curious. Where are they living? What's that nest like? What's it lined with? They nest in they're cavity nesters like most chickadees, I think all in North America, but cavity mean they nest in holes in trees or bird boxes. And chickadees are amazing because the pair themselves will often excavate the entire things themselves. And if you've ever seen a chickadee beak, it's very tiny. You can measure it in millimeters. It is very tiny, and they will pick away at punky little stuff. And I mean, this pair will go on for days and days and days making this, and they'll disperse those fillings from inside that hole in different places. They don't make a big obvious pile because they don't want to attract trouble, which is another webinar we'll get to down the road. But those chickadees are my neighbors, and I want to understand them better. And so sometimes you even have to fake it till you make it. Maybe you're like, I'm not really that into the chickadees. Well, what if you were? So start to ask yourself questions about what might it be like to be that bird. Where do those birds sleep at night? Because not every bird sleeps in a nest, especially most of the year when they're not nesting. What do those birds do during rough weather, during storms, during smoky fire seasons, during gnarly rainy thunderstorms? Do they have eggs yet? Do they have young yet? How are they feeding their young? I saw someone posted in the chat about ravens and crows, and yeah, they're feeding their young right now. On my drive from my job this morning back home, there was crows, and those crows had baby birds. They had a baby bird of some sort in their mouth, and I still don't know who. I've got to guess. And they were being chased by other birds because they got babies to feed at home too.
I have to say, I saw that yesterday at my own house on my walk. I spotted a raven peeling back the branches of an evergreen tree. And I said, what is it up to? And then I watched, and there's just hopping up.
Mm-hmm.
Finally went in and came out with this little baby. And no mobbing, no other birds around. I think the parents were off and ran off with it. It's real.
So this time of year, no matter where we are in the country, there's either we're well into the breeding season or we're early on, but we have a lot of birds that are breeding. So imagine what it's like to be one of those parent birds or one of those baby birds. Imagine what it's like to know that as a parent bird. Say you're a parent, let's go with a very common bird across the country. Let's go like a yellow rump warbler. Yellow rumps are all over the place. Little butterbutts, one of our most common warblers. And those yellow rumps, they are food for a lot of things, right? They don't spend a ton of time on the ground, but they're low in the bushes sometimes. So they got to be careful of things like weasels, of things like house cats, of anything that can jump really high and grab them, bobcats, You know, they're a little snack. There's not much to them, but cat can't resist a bird. Just kind of how it goes. And cats got to eat too. They also have to really worry about all the aerial predators, right? So all of the birds, the merlin, you know, the sharp-shinned hawk, you know, the Cooper's hawk, who eat many small birds every single day because that's what they need to do to raise their own young. It takes a lot of little birds to raise a Cooper's hawk, for instance, you know, or any other raptor that feeds on birds. And then you've got all these nest robbers, things that can climb up trees. You've got snakes that could come in and take your eggs and your babies. You've got raccoons and ringtails, and you've got, skunks, and I mean, you've got squirrels and mice and chipmunks. All these things do eat eggs of birds. I mean, occasionally strange random things like, you know, there's a strange video of a deer eating bird eggs. Probably not common, but it can happen. So it is not easy being a wild bird. And so if you're having a hard time really tuning into the bird's world, go for the empathy and the curiosity. Like, well, what's it really like to be that bird? And give that bird your attention. Give that bird your respect. It's a very different feeling than just, you know, going down the boardwalk and seeing how many I can tick off, which I like too. I love getting a good list of birds on a daily walk. But I also like to stop every once in a while and just see what's going on in those birds' world right around me. And so what I'm trying to do then is, like Molly said, I'm decreasing my sphere of disturbance by walking really fast and having a very focused energy and pointing and making noises and say people to like shh, doing stuff like that. You're going to upset birds. It's just the nature of how it is. And that's going to affect the way they behave. That might put them at risk even. But when we slow down and let the birds come to us and we peek into their world and we become part of their world, well, then our sphere of awareness gets much bigger than our sphere of disturbance. And then we don't know what we're going to learn. It might not have anything to do with the birds. It might be that you're quiet and still enough that the birds aren't upset, that neighboring bobcat or fox or weasel or who knows what, maybe peregrine might come right near you. And you might get an opportunity to see something pretty unusual and special for some of us. So that's the idea of that fourth step. And the fifth step is really the simplest. Repeat. Make it a practice. It's not a bird-sit experiment, it's a bird-sit practice. And like Molly said, there's no you can't do it wrong, folks. If you're open and excited to learn, whatever works for you is great. You know, if your sit spot is literally, you say you can't get outside for some reason, if you have a window you can look out and be connected to those birds, fine. If you got a tiny little balcony, great. If you've got a beautiful, massive state forest, whatever, as long as you have the intention and follow these simple steps to practice regularly, you will understand more and more of what's going on to these birds' lives, and you will get a much more qualitative understanding, a much more holistic and broad understanding of what's going on in the world of birds, which will make where you live a more bird-friendly place. Because you can't help but have more respect for birds when you better understand the birds. When we have more empathy for the birds, we can't help but want to be more thoughtful and kind to them. That's been my experience, at least. That's generally what I've seen over decades of doing this with hundreds, thousands of people, as that sensitivity that comes in. Now, it doesn't mean you can't, have other ways of being with them too. I hunt and eat birds too. I have connections to animals in lots of ways. But and then there might be birds that are trying to nest in your house and it's not a good idea for you or them, and you got to try and help them and find safe ways to do that. But that's about having a relationship. So this bird sit practice is about building relationship with the birds, and it's about creating a space for you to have experiences that are relaxing and grounding and mindful, and the birds are a fabulous companion in doing that. So as you wrap up, we're going to go to some questions here in a minute. So I just want to wrap up and stop yapping. Tomorrow, I think, Molly, is this correct that you guys are launching off a bird sit challenge kind of for a month? So as many times as you can to get outside and do this. Molly will be doing somewhat of a update, I think, regularly. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there will be an Instagram live guided practice for 20 minutes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So if you're on Instagram, go to Audubon CA, and you can tune into our Instagram live on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m.
Well, great. So there's a nice, I mean, boy, talk about support. I mean, folks, you've got a great setup here. It's so hard to have that kind of structure and support. And I know not everyone, but a lot of us are probably on this call today have maybe a little more flexibility and time in their schedule than in the past. And if you don't, maybe you can find another way to make this happen. But this is a great opportunity. And it's a chance to tune into that drama of a bird's world. It is an amazing show. It's a fascinating show, and it's full of questions. It's full of oddities and new things you can learn. And it also will probably bring you to a place of wondering, how is it reflecting what's going on for you? So the kind of next step down the road, is how is bird language kind of a mirror for what's going on for us? And right now we're in a very unknown place for a lot of us. I don't know how about you, but I haven't lived through a pandemic. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know how this ends or changes the world for me. It's really comforting to know that nature isn't canceled. It's really comforting for me to know birds are still doing what they do every mid-April where I live. Yesterday this weekend, our first palm warbler in my yard. And it's every year I've been keeping track for about 20 years of what birds come and when we notice them. And the average arrival date was exactly the day I saw that bird. And that happens year after year after year. Sometimes it's a little tweaked, but there's something about the stability, the regularity of the world that's bigger than us, the more than human world, that we're giving you an invitation to go spend some time in, to bask in, to sit in, to tune into that. And I hope you take that opportunity. So I'll give it back to Molly, and then we'll get some questions going here. Thank you for your patience. I hope you're enjoying.
Thank you, Dan. That's beautiful. I can feel it's like a sensory experience to really tune into that regularity of the natural world, what's happening with the birds in spring. It's incredibly grounding and orienting, at least it has been for me. And so even just as we talk about it, I feel my whole nervous system relaxing, feeling more open, feeling more calm, more trust. And I think that's really a lot of what we're trying to get out of this practice, and what it offers us on a day-to-day basis that we really need, especially now. So feel free to put your questions in the chat. And I've got a few for you, Dan, just to kick us off. But you've worked now for 20, 30 years with bird language programs with people of all ages. So maybe can you share with us a little bit of, what about if we're working with kids, how have you seen bird language land with that age group, or what does it offer them that you want us to know about?
Children generally have most of their wild instincts more intact than adults. As a parent of multiple children, I remember early on realizing, oh my job is to domesticate a wild thing. Like, that's part of my job here. This is a fine line I'm walking, but they come with instincts that don't always fit in these little boxes we live in at certain temperatures and certain times of day. We expect them to do this, that, and the other thing. And so I would say with children, like, get out of the way, like set up structures, but really as adults, let them be wild, let them be free, let them be playful, let them be curious. And they might need a little guidance and structure, especially if they've had it kind of cut off for a long time. So, go wander and explore and sit, invite them to come and hang out with you. And don't freak out if they're not being still or chill or quiet at your little bird sit. It's fine. If they're going to be yapping and running around, you know what? That's fine. The next time it might be chill. But the fact that you're outside with your kid, hanging out with the intention of looking and thinking about birds, that's a win. Like, if they're thinking, oh, my parents value this, or my caregiver cares about this, like, you're teaching them a great lesson already. So don't think about it too hard. But games, playfulness, anything outside, hide and seek's probably like the oldest, most amazing nature sensory game on the planet for a reason. Keep playing that game, especially outside. Be playful and be in nature, and your children will continue to understand the language of nature.
Fantastic. Can you say, so you've got 2 teenage boys at home. Tell us a little bit about how bird language has been assisting you during this COVID time, especially in terms of how you're working with, parenting these 2 boys.
Yeah. I mean, I probably speak for a handful of other teen parents here online, is that at this age, it's pretty much 17, 14, you've done most of the hard work and they're kind of on their own path, and you just nudge and move and hope all that downloading worked at some point and they're kind of on their own path. So the little nudging that we do is just some mandatory outdoor family time, or just make sure they're getting time outside on their own. But even just weekly, we've been doing some nice walks together. We're lucky enough to live in a place where we can find some places to walk outdoors, and they generally walk way ahead of us, but they're still kind of with us, and they'll wait for us at little junctions or turns. And I always ask questions. I'll always be like, "Hey, did you hear that back there?" And like, "Yeah." And sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, and I'll find out. I might ask about a tree. I might ask about, I'll just kind of see where they at, kind of test them a little bit here and there. But it's already in there. So I just try and love them and be with them and have a good time with them. But for me personally, I'd say I've definitely been more attuned to getting out and just doing some sits whenever I can. Sometimes it's just after dinner, a little walk up the road, or just go sit out by the woodshed, go for a walk out back. My wife invited me to go sit out with her the other day. That was really cool because I was wondering if our hermit thrushes, I knew they had to be back, but I didn't hear them yet. And I said, man, if there's thrushes, this is the time of night when we hear them, but they're not doing their amazing, which that's it. I even bask, I'm even fearful of trying to imitate them. They're so gorgeous, but they just little, and sometimes but they're doing the little, it's so quiet and tiny, and just in the fading light, one came and landed 10 feet from us at like that thrush time. And I was like, oh, there they are. But then the next morning when I went out, which I think was this morning, yesterday, they were singing like mad. They were just filling the forest with that ethereal, mystical flute-like sound. So yeah, I've been getting out more during this time. It's been important to me just to, stay grounded.
Wow. We have got some nice responses to your thrush song.
Oh, thanks.
Feel free to share any stories that's come up in the chat about what birds have been showing up for you during this time. Has anyone been a special visitor? Have you discovered a bird in your area that you never knew was there, never really took the time to notice? Like today, I was on my walk, really looking at a flock of cedar waxwings, picking berries off this tree, and they're like airbrush paintings, and they're so gorgeous. And I've actually been slower, and I can really watch them pick the berries, and it's just been so beautiful to really appreciate. They're like bird rock stars to me. Right there in my backyard, in my neighborhood. Just in the chat, just want to say that the book, What the Robin Knows, How Birds Reveal Nature's Secrets, is the book that Dan is the science editor for. Yeah, also authored by John Young. And you can get that on Amazon.
There you go. John Young was the gentleman I spoke of earlier, who was the one who pointed me towards bird language. So he's been a colleague, he's a teacher, a mentor, and now a colleague of mine for most of my life, and a wonderful, wonderful lad. Yeah. Great book. We had a good time creating it.
John's here in Santa Cruz, and you can check out some of his work at 8shields.org. Also request to repeat the 5 steps. Dan, can you take us back through those 5 steps of how to do a bird sit?
Oh yeah, no problem. So first thing you got to do is you got to find a sit spot. Find a place to go sit. So it can be anywhere. Convenience is key. All right, so pick a place. Don't worry about the details. Get a comfy seat. This is an easy one. Whatever you need to do to be comfortable out there, do that. You want to feel safe. You want to feel comfortable, or else you're going to have a hard time learning. And then it's all about tuning into your senses, like let go of your mind, tune into your senses. So whatever that looks like for you, Molly led us through a number of great practices that literally involve like some nice breathing, kind of just paying attention to what's going on in our body, and then tuning into the individual senses. But maybe, whatever works for you to be able to drop in to a kind of a receptive, peaceful place. That's helpful for tuning into birds, which is step 4, tune into the birds. And that step was all about really trying to imagine what it's like to be a bird and to ask questions from that bird's perspective. And I know that's anthropomorphizing and all that good stuff. And I don't really care because it's helping you connect in this moment. You're not writing a scientific paper that's going to get published about it. You're just having a bird connection. So thinking about, where's this bird sleep? Does this bird have a family? What are this bird's cares? What makes this bird happy in the morning? All these kinds of things. So imagine what's it like to be that bird. You're going for quality here, and I say even just focus on one bird, like one type of bird, because this isn't about having a big list and knowing every detail about them. It's just about getting to know them like neighbors. And the last one is repeat the practice. Make it a practice. Get out there regularly. Those are your 5 steps. which I think we also have on the Audubon website somewhere too, California Audubon.
Yes, if you go to the homepage of the Audubon California website, it will link you to the bird language page with a lot of information about how to do the bird sit and other information there for diving deeper. Dan, while we're on our bird sits this week and throughout this upcoming month, you know, what story should we bring back to you? What information do you want us to come back to you next week?
I'm just a big fan of behaviors. I'm always curious about what you see birds, especially if there's anything that kind of surprises you or that's new to you. I love firsts, like first times people get to experience something. Like maybe there's a bird you've been hearing a lot, but you haven't seen it, or vice versa. A bird you've been seeing all the time, but you never connected the sound it makes to that bird. And the cool thing about that is once we get to bird by ear a little more, meaning we can identify birds by their sound, we have a connection with them no matter where we go, whether we can see them or not, whether they're, when they're outside the house, like maybe I'm doing dishes, but outside you can hear like a, let's say going for the California towhee there, that little squeaky sneaker call, you'd be like, oh, the Cal towhee's out there, and sitting on top of the shrubs. But yeah, I love to be able to, so I want to, when you're going out, you're gathering your stories, your experiences, I'd love to hear anything. I'm easy. But curiosity is always getting me going. Like, oh, did you know that? Like certain woodpeckers can actually hover in the middle of the air and pick off bugs, kind of like a kingfisher hovers, or, cool behaviors are always fun. But anything, if it's a first for you, if you're excited about it, if it has your curiosity going, it's something I'm game. I'm interested in hearing next week when we regather.
All right, there is a question here. What bird in the LA area sounds like a dive bomber? Do you know the answer there, Dan?
I don't, it's hard without interacting with this person and actually hearing their imitation. First thing that comes to mind are hummingbirds, because hummingbirds make such a wide variety of sounds, including, if you're really close and you get buzzed by a hummer, it can really sound like, I don't know. So I'm not sure what your dive bomber sound is, but if it's anything like that, there's a number of hummingbirds where you live. I think Allen's is the most common one, I believe, out there. But anyway, yeah, little flashes of buzzy, insecty, gnarly, crazy little energetic birds. They're kind of tyrants sometimes, but they're really good at what they do.
Okay, another question here. How to attract birds to our quarter-acre yard? Any ideas for attracting birds?
Yeah. There are so many great resources on bird-friendly habitats out there that are going to be way more, way better than that. But the basic things are make it bird-friendly. So having a lot of native plant shrubs, some, for instance, if you just had a big flat lawn, that's going to be good for some birds, like robins pulling up worms maybe, but you're going to want a mix of habitats to get a mix of birds. A little bit of water feature if you're in a dry area is key. A little bird bath or a little tiny pond or something like that is great if you can do that. Bird feeders are, some people love them, some people don't. Depends on if you want to maintain them properly and if you're in a place where it's safe. Where I live, we have bears sometimes, so you can't have bird feeders out, for instance, certain times a year. However, so feeders can definitely do that. But natural feeders are things like flowering and fruiting shrubs and bushes and plants. And if you just type in, bird-friendly habitats, make a bird-friendly backyard, you'll find some great stuff Audubon has as well as others.
I'll highlight our native plants for birds. Amazing resource through the Audubon website where you can type in your area code or zip code and it will tell you all the native plants that we recommend for your specific area and where you can buy them. Some of those places might be closed right now and we wouldn't recommend going out, but when you're able to, there's some really amazing plants that will attract birds. And just as an example, like a native oak tree is home for 550 different species of moths and butterflies. That is basically like a bird grocery store. The birds will go there. They're going to feed their chicks like, I don't know, I think the number is like 6,000 caterpillars or whatever to feed a clutch of chickadees. So we need those kind of native plants providing that kind of food resource as compared to like a non-native ginkgo is like 5 species of moths and butterflies. So that's why we emphasize native plants are an essential lifeline for birds. So whenever planting or developing bird habitat, we always recommend go with the natives. Another question, how might COVID shutdown impact bird species?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably hearing a disproportionate amount of stories about how nature's taking back over the world. I mean, nature hasn't changed all that much. I think that a lot of birds, it's very dependent on the species and where you are, and are birds in urban areas that have been really shut down? That must be interesting. I'm guessing I'm not in one, so but I would think that there may be some more opportunities, some more resources they can exploit. But then there also is the fact that a lot of birds are dependent upon people in a variety of ways for cover, for safety, or for food. Those birds now are maybe struggling and have to adapt. So I think it's probably quite a mix. But with the overall pattern being less human disturbance on the landscape because our activity level has gone down as humans, that's going to probably mean less interference for a lot of birds in some ways. It doesn't change the fact that there's buildings they might fly into or that there's house cats and things like that, but it does change the fact that there's less airplanes flying and noise pollution and other things and light pollution at night during migration, and some of those things may have been adapted. But I don't know for certain, but I have a lot of theories about some of those likely changes, many of which are probably positive and helpful, and some of which are probably very challenging for those birds.
And I think for many people, they're saying, did the birds suddenly get louder? And in some cases they did, because spring song is so intense and robust. And for some of us, it's just that we've quieted down and we can really actually experience and appreciate more of what was happening around us before, but we didn't have really the bandwidth to pay attention.
Yeah, and over the years, I can tell you, when people start tuning into birds, like all of a sudden now they're saying, "Oh, this bird just moved into my neighborhood." So it's often just a matter of awareness for us. So we learn things, then all of a sudden they pop into our existence, but they've been there all along, most of them, and now is a chance to just get to know them a little bit better.
Actually, I have a great experience with that because I grew up in Massachusetts, and I didn't grow up really with anyone pointing out birds to me or teaching me about birds. It just wasn't really top of mind for my family and my community at the time. But I noticed them a bit. But when I was 34, I went back home to visit my mom, and I was at her house in the city where I grew up, and I heard this bird song, and I was like, I know that sound. I've been hearing that sound my whole life, but I actually have no idea who it's connected to. And I went outside expecting it to be must be some really special bird that I don't see often. And I looked up, and what was sitting in the tree but a blue jay. And Dan, will you do your blue jay again?
What was it, the sneak one? Like, yeah, they do so many, but yeah.
I love that sound. It's like deep in my soul, but I was like, I never even knew who was making that sound. And then I was with my 4-year-old nephew at the time. I was like, well, I'm going to get him started early. So I said, Declan, what bird is making that sound? Thinking that I'm going to teach him something. He goes, blue jay. Felt totally one-upped. And also just as a reflection of generationally, it's okay to come to these awarenesses at whatever age you come to them. It can happen very quickly. And because we're so hardwired to listen to bird language, it can activate very quickly once we kind of really tune in and let it come alive. So
I just want to point out one or two people saying how fun this can be. I don't feel like you need to learn all the birds, folks. This is your chance to just get to chill and be with a few birds, and that's just as valuable. And so right on, I'm glad people are seeing that. And don't worry about being right or wrong or knowing all you're going to want to know. We're all curious. If we're here, you're curious. But, you can look into some apps, you can look into some books. That's all great. Talk to other people. But mostly lead with your own curiosity and be okay with that tension of not knowing. That's a powerful thing. That's it's going to really help you become an even better kind of birder and naturalist is not knowing. So be okay with not knowing. Eventually you'll learn more, and then you'll learn there's more to know. So just a plug for not knowing. It's a good thing.
Definitely. All right, we're about to wrap up, but Dan, we've got a lot of requests for a birdsong concert. Can you give us a few more?
Oh boy, a birdsong concert. Let's say we have our ravens in the neighborhood right now doing all sorts of. They're doing so many strange noises. There's a guy named George Buman. I think I saw his name down there earlier. Does great raven imitator out in Yellowstone. But let's see. That's our cardinal, the northern cardinal here that we have. Lovely, gorgeous bird. It's always like the TV eagle, but it's actually a red-tailed hawk. Let's see, on our broad-wing hawk in this area, and because the goshawk, that's a scary one. You hear mama near the nest, she might dive bomb and hit you. There's a little variety of chickadee calls. Goldfinches. Kind of like that. So there's a few of my favorites.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, that is a really sweet plug for the webinar on May 5th, How to Imitate 5 Common Bird Songs. So you're going to take us on a journey to really develop our own whistles.
Yeah. And if I've got a bunch of videos on YouTube. It's called Lead with Nature. I've got a Learn a Bird series right now with like 5 birds. They're just fun to check out. And yeah, feel free to follow me all over the place. Lead with Nature, Facebook, Instagram, website, all that good stuff.
Fantastic. And so thank you so much, Dan. Next week, our second in the series, April 28th, same time, Tuesday at 11, 5 Voices of the Birds, Shapes of Alarm, How to Spot Trouble. We're going to be a lot more technical details on how to decode bird language and how to train your mind and your awareness into the patterns, behavioral patterns and vocalizations. So it's going to be an awesome one to catch. And then May 5th, following Tuesday, mimicry, how to imitate 5 common bird songs. In between now and then, 30-day bird sit challenge starts tomorrow, Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. 20-minute guided practices on Instagram Live Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 1 p.m. Audubon CA. And please come back next week to share your story. Get ready to throw that stuff in the chat. What'd you see? What'd you hear? Who did you discover? How'd you feel? What did it do for you? Did you like it? Did you hate it? All the above. We want to hear your story. And we can't wait to practice with you. Again, Dan, learn more about Dan's nature-based consulting at leadwithnature.com. And thanks for being here. Take good care. May your bird sits bring you calm, connection, curiosity. Have fun out there. Any other words from you, Dan?
Enjoy. Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Thank you, Molly. You're the best.
You're welcome. Getting slightly better.
All right. See you next week.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.